For the first video installment, I would like to talk about a perceived issue of gatekeeping within the swing and blues dancing scene. And I want to open it up by asking this question. What gives white and Asian dancers in the scene the right to say who can and cannot teach uh, an African American dance and music forms? In this particular case, swing and blues dancing and the music associated with it. And before I go on, I would like to say this very clear and specifically. I am not saying that a dance scene or an instructor or a dance event is specifically trying to act like gatekeepers. All right, I'm not saying that at all. I don't know that. I don't know the mindset behind organizers when they pick and choose who to invite to their event to teach at their events. But in my conversations throughout the years and my travels throughout the years, I've noticed a basic thread when talking to people whenever I bring up the issue of trying our best to really be active about hiring more qualified African American people to teach at dance events, since we're all celebrating a music and dance form that came out of African American communities. And one of the underlying things that I hear all the time is that, well, they're not well known, or me myself, I am not well known, which I know I'm not well known in the blues and swing dancing scene as of yet. But if both scenes, as a collective whole, at least have come to a mutual agreement or understanding that there is a lack of representation of African Americans that are teaching or DJing or playing the music or singing the songs at these dance events, then what should it matter if they are recognizable, or if they are a known name? Now, I am not saying to just hire any random old person. If a if a African American reaches out to a dance scene and requesting to be considered to work your event, right? Like, they are reaching out to you. What is the harm in vetting that person by either talking to that individual that reached out to you, or reaching out to other scene organizers to ask about that individual that had reached out to you to request to work at your event, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Also, another thing too is you don't have to have that African American representative teach the most highest level concept class at your event. They can start off with a simple level, like a beginner S type level class at your event, or teach or DJ a session that might not be like the main night dance, but maybe a 30-minute set here, or something else that, if you are kind of want to see how they do. And that's completely fine as well. Because when you say that, oh, well, they're not well known, so we don't want to take a chance of hiring them because we want to try to recoup our money back, which is completely understandable, as well as from an organizational standpoint, you would like to recoup a lot of the money that you put into running an event. But if you have, let's say, 4 or 5 other instructors that are named instructors, that are well-known instructors, what is the harm in hiring that one instructor that isn't a known name to teach at your event, especially if they're African American? What is the harm in having that one person teach at your event? So, and when I hear this, it comes off as a gatekeeper mentality. Now, I know that's not intentional, I know that's not on purpose, but that's what it come across as. And hearing this even from my own experiences, reaching out to people and not hearing anything back, or when other African Americans in the dance scene when we have spoken in private, it's a perception of like, well, we are going to say who can and cannot teach an African American art form. And that just doesn't really, and to me personally, that doesn't sit well with me. So that's something that we really need to try to be cognizant of going in the future. Once again, organizers of dance scenes, do your homework, vet people, right? If myself or somebody else, reaches out to you saying, "Hey, I would like to, work at your event, whether it's DJing, teaching, lecturing, playing music, whatever," then it's okay to ask for like a sample playlist, or it's okay to ask for maybe a video of them teaching or whatever the case might be. Like, that's fine. That's part of the vetting process. Or even talking to the person to see if, their idea of how they like to teach their classes or DJ or whatever the case might be kind of matches or go in line with what your overall concept of how you want the event run. That is perfectly fine. But to completely ignore an individual who reached out to you requesting to work at your event, it gives this notion of kind of like, well, we don't know this person, which is understandable. So we don't know if they're really going to fit what we want here, which is understandable. But if you don't also do the vetting, then how do you know if that person is going to or not going to work for your event? So once again, it's giving out this idea of like, well, we are the gatekeepers to a culture that's not our culture. And and we don't even do that within the African American community culture. We don't even think that way. So to have this perception out there is it could be detrimental, especially when a lot of people are saying we need more representation, but yet when people have reached out to events to just be like, hey, I'm interested in doing this, then either there is no communication back, there's no back and forth, and it leaves the person, especially the African American, wondering what's going on here, because everyone here, when I watch panel sessions at dance events saying how we need to have more representation at dance events, but then when someone actually goes out and does it, it's one of those, well, we're not even going to bother to respond to this in some way, shape, or form. I'm not, once again, I am not saying that people are actively doing this, because I do not know, but it does seem kind of suspicious when, we hear like we need to put ourselves out there, which I completely agree, and request and submit for dance events, which I completely agree, but then we don't get any kind of response back. It just seems like it's all talk, and it's more virtue signaling than really actively want to try to hire, especially African Americans or any other person of color, to work at your dance events. So, that's something that I personally would like to see a better effort at doing, especially from organizers, because once again, organizers, you have a very thankless job, and I get that and I know that. But at the same time, you still need to do your work. You still need to be responsible enough to actively seek out, people of color, to truly diversify and to be truly inclusive in your event, and not just say you want to do it, but then don't take actions to actually make that happen. So, what do you think? Let's have this discussion. Do you think I'm completely wrong and I'm a horrible individual for bringing this up? Let me know. I am cool with that. But this is something that we need to do, or try to get better at doing, of really making a concerted effort to reach out to other dance organizers to ask if there is a person of color that they can consider hiring for their event, and reaching out to that individual and saying, hey, we would like to hire you for this event. Can you tell us a little bit of your philosophy or your mindset about certain things, and just see if it matches up with, with what you want with the scene. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. But then if someone calls you out and says, hey, why don't you have anybody here? It's like, oh, well, we talked to all these different people, and either one, their schedule was too busy, or two, their idea was completely different from what we really wanted, and we really wanted to stay true to our mission for what we wanted this event to be. And for this year, they just didn't fit that, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you won't know that until you actually talk to the individual or reach out to other individuals to see if someone is is worth working with. So once again, let's open this up for discussion, and I hope everyone has a great night, and I look forward to talking about the next installment. I have a lot of these kind of questions, so be prepared. Good night.